I woke up to find myself transmigrated into the role of the male lead in a novel, who was already dead. At this moment, the female lead was planning to bring her, white moonlight, back home, claiming she needed to protect that innocent soul. In the original plot of the book, the male lead would eventually be framed and betrayed by the white moonlight in various ways. The female lead would subject him to both physical and emotional torment, leading to his bitter and resentful death. After the male lead's death, the female lead would finally learn the truth. She would then mercilessly torment the white moonlight, selling him abroad, while she herself would commit suicide on a rainy night at the male lead's grave. This so-called tragic ending was utterly absurd. I have no interest in being a masochist. I plan to divorce the female lead directly, split the assets evenly, and let that despicable pair of scoundrels be stuck with each other. I'm curious to see what tricks they can come up with. When Victoria returned, I was already sitting on the sofa in the villa, waiting for her. I knew exactly what she was going to say. It was nothing more than what she had mentioned a few days ago. Her beloved Ethan had caught the eye of Raven, the daughter of a mafia boss, and that woman intended to take him by force, making Ethan her boyfriend. She wanted to bring Ethan to live in our marital home and have me move out, publicly claiming that our relationship had broken down and we were already divorced. She also said that Raven had a cleanliness obsession and disliked married men, so this would help Ethan escape her clutches. She insisted it was all just an act and wouldn't affect our marital relationship afterward. In the original plot, the male lead found this outrageous and firmly opposed it, leading to a heated argument between the two. However, Victoria ultimately brought Ethan back to their marital home. From then on, the original protagonist was subjected to physical and emotional torment by Ethan and Victoria, ultimately leading to his death. Since I'm here now, I naturally won't repeat the original protagonist's mistakes. A woman like her isn't worth my time. So, before Victoria could speak, I said first, "Honey, I agree to let Ethan stay at our house. I think you're right, he's so pitiful and has no family to rely on, so we really should help him. I've also heard that Raven isn't a good person, and those she takes a liking to but who refuse her often end up in a bad situation. This is like doing a good deed for us." Victoria was stunned for a moment after hearing my words. When she came back to her senses, she seemed unable to believe I would agree so easily and tentatively asked, "Are you still angry with me and just saying this on purpose? But you know, Ethan has no friends, and besides me, no one can help him. I can't just stand by and watch." I really couldn't be bothered to listen to her continue making excuses, so I raised my hand to cut her off. "I genuinely agree. After all, he holds such an important place in your heart, and you'd definitely feel bad if you didn't take care of him." Victoria didn't expect me to come around, and a flicker of pleasant surprise flashed in her eyes. "Honey, you're really not angry?" Actually, she was more in disbelief, because the original owner had a huge argument with her over this and gave her the cold shoulder for several days. I gazed at her affectionately and said earnestly, "Of course, I like you so much, how could I bear to see you worried?" "Humph, this disgusting bitch," I silently gave her the middle finger in my heart. She had already made up her mind, even if I disagreed, she would forcibly bring her white moonlight back. She asked for my opinion so hypocritically, just to take the moral high ground. If there were any conflicts between me and the white moonlight in the future, or if I had any dissatisfaction with her, she could say that I agreed to it from the start and shift all the blame onto me. And she herself, on one hand, has a caring and loving husband like me, and on the other, she still has her long-cherished white moonlight by her side. She's getting all the benefits. Hearing me say this, Victoria happily kissed me on the cheek. "Darling, you're so good. I really like you so much." I forced myself to hold back my disgust and didn't wipe my face, then changed the subject. "However, I think if we're going to put on a show, we have to do it thoroughly. Raven likes Ethan so much, and if she hears that you're divorcing me for him, she'll definitely send someone to investigate. If she finds out we're faking the divorce, she'll probably cause trouble for you and go after Ethan again." Upon hearing this, Victoria instinctively nodded and anxiously asked, "Then what do you think we should do, darling?" I put on a considerate and caring expression, trying to convince her, "Let's actually go through with the divorce, and then the two of you can get a marriage certificate. Even if Raven is unhappy, once she knows Ethan is your husband, she won't dare lay a hand on him. She'll still have to consider your status as the daughter of a wealthy family." Victoria frowned, almost instinctively objecting, "That won't work. We agreed on a fake divorce, how can we actually get a divorce certificate? Besides, the law doesn't recognize fake divorces." This woman is quite cautious. I took her hand and patted it reassuringly. "Darling, we've been married for 6 years, and our relationship has always been good. I trust you completely. Look, you want to bring Ethan back and have me move out, and I haven't even been jealous because he's a man. It's because I trust you and don't suspect you cheat behind my back. My expression turned cold, and my tone became displeased. What? I'm thinking of you like this, and you don't even trust me? This scumbag woman wants to have it both ways, and I don't want to play along anymore. What kind of nonsense is this, only realizing her mistakes after death, repenting for her wrongs, and then dying in front of the male lead's grave? It's downright disgusting, and she's not even afraid of dirtying his resting place. I'm determined to divorce her and split the assets. Once I have money, what kind of woman can't I find? What kind of life can't I live? She and Ethan can do whatever they want, it won't have anything to do with me by then. I know Victoria is head over heels for Ethan right now, so she'll agree. And with what I just said, she'll think I'm hopelessly devoted to her, with no boundaries left. She'll definitely take a bigger gamble. Sure enough, after quietly watching me for a few seconds, Victoria finally agreed, I believe you. She coquettishly threw herself into my arms and said softly, honey, do you love me this much? You're even willing to get a divorce for me? I sneered inwardly but pretended to be sincere on the surface, yes, who made me love you so much? For now, I still have to play along with her and not let her sense my true intentions. Once I get the divorce certificate, she'll be nothing to me. Victoria beamed with joy and assured me again that her relationship with Ethan was purely platonic. Even if they got a marriage certificate in the future, she promised not to cross any boundaries. Once Raven took a liking to another man and stopped paying attention to Ethan, we would remarry. She still seemed uneasy, her gaze fixed on me as she said seriously, honey, you must promise that when I tell you to remarry me, you'll do it immediately. I curled my lips into a smile. Of course. Humph, once the divorce certificate is in my hands, who does she think she is? Since she wants to hear it, I'll say it, it won't cost me anything. If promises were truly effective, there wouldn't be so many disputes. I'm not a 3-year-old child, I don't believe in such things. Satisfied with my promise, Victoria smiled. I quickly seized the moment to press on, let's draft the divorce agreement today, and then I'll move out. That way, no one will suspect anything. Victoria hesitated again, her tone flustered, do we really have to go this far? I said earnestly, darling, our feelings won't change because of a piece of divorce paper. I'll move out, but you can visit me anytime. Victoria finally nodded. I called a lawyer to draft the divorce agreement, splitting the assets equally. After that, I moved to another villa. A month later, we successfully obtained our divorce certificates. As we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Victoria seemed to have something to say but hesitated. I immediately cut her off, we've come this far. We can't let Raven see through the act and ruin everything. Victoria closed her mouth. Without looking back, I got into my newly bought luxury car, closed the door, and played a song, a celebration for myself. After divorcing me, Victoria quickly married Ethan. The wedding was grand and lavish, inviting industry leaders and many friends from the circle, drawing widespread attention. At the same time, everyone learned about my divorce from Victoria. A few days later, at a banquet for business elites, I saw Victoria and Ethan. They walked in arm, looking intimate, smiling and chatting with those around them, painting a picture of serene happiness. Upon seeing them, the crowd couldn't help but whisper. Some felt sorry for me, thinking that after 6 years of relationship with Victoria, she gave it up so easily for another man. I was truly pitiful, having wasted my sincerity. Others thought Ethan was cunning, having just been pursued by a mafia heiress before winning the favor of a wealthy socialite. Of course, many people looked at me with probing eyes. Everyone knew I loved Victoria so much I would risk my life for her. They didn't believe I would really divorce her and thought there was something fishy going on. Over there, Victoria introduced Ethan to many people, specifically mentioning that she had found true love and hoped everyone would look out for Ethan. She wanted everyone to believe their marriage wasn't a joke, to dispel any thoughts Raven might have of trying to take him away. I calmly held my champagne, waiting for my companion. Soon, an incredibly beautiful and aloof woman swayed gracefully toward me, Serena, a well-known influencer in the circle. Her makeup was flawless, her demeanor elegant, and she stood quietly by my side without saying much. Just then, Victoria's gaze shifted over. The gentle smile that had been on her face froze the moment she saw Serena beside me. Her eyes widened abruptly, filled with astonishment, shock, and a hint of barely concealed anger, as if she had been frozen in place. Clearly, she hadn't expected that, despite our agreed-upon fake divorce, I would have such a dazzling companion by my side. Our gazes met, and I didn't look away. A faint smile curled at the corner of my lips as I raised my champagne glass and toasted her from afar. Victoria's lips trembled slightly, her eyes fixed on me with an indescribable complexity. She instinctively took a small step forward, as if wanting to make her way through the crowd to reach me. But the next moment, her new husband, Ethan, noticed her unusual behavior and whispered a question. Around them, many relatives, friends, and business partners were watching. Especially when she noticed Raven's gaze fixed intently on her and Ethan. In the end, she didn't come over, but her eyes remained glued to me. Later at the banquet, Victoria lost the composure and smile she had when she first entered, keeping a cold face the whole time. When Ethan spoke to her, she only gave perfunctory replies, her gaze occasionally drifting toward me. It's not that she lacks brains, she's just too confident in my love for her, which is why she acts so recklessly. Now that she sees another woman by my side, she's panicking. I'm not the original host. I just want to live happily for myself. From now on, I'll be the one tormenting her. If she thinks she can torment me, she's got another thing coming. After the banquet ended, Serena took my arm and left with me. Victoria called me several times, but I didn't answer. Later, she sent a commanding message, "Julian. Wait for me at home." I could almost imagine her gritting her teeth as she typed. Who does she think she is? I didn't even bother responding and went straight to the bar with Serena, partying all night. The next day, tired from playing, I returned home and saw Victoria waiting at the entrance of my villa. I hadn't answered any of her calls, and the security guard wouldn't let her in. I had no idea how long she had been waiting. At that moment, her face was so dark it seemed like water could drip from it, and the look she gave me was as if she wanted to devour me. I yawned and casually said, "Good morning." Victoria's voice was icy as she spoke, "Julian, don't you have anything to explain to me?" I blinked in confusion. Explain what? Victoria unlocked her phone screen and practically shoved it in my face. I saw Serena's personal social media account on it, with no caption, just a side-angle photo. In the picture, she was slightly tilting her head, looking at the man beside her. The man only showed half his profile, tall and upright, the scene quiet yet ambiguous, full of atmosphere. Her fans were going crazy, with the screen flooded with blessings and comments about how well-matched they were. The buzz kept rising, directly landing on the trending list. Serena is famously known as an aloof beauty, relying on her cool and stunning looks to amass millions of followers. Her social media is filled with scenery, outfits, and daily work updates, never mentioning personal relationships. Even when celebrities in the industry or wealthy heirs publicly expressed their admiration, she never responded, not even with ambiguous interactions. She always maintained a distant, unapproachable demeanor. Now that she openly posted my photo on social media, Victoria, of course, couldn't sit still and came to confront me so quickly. I shrugged and said nonchalantly, "It's just a photo, what's the big deal?" Victoria instantly exploded, her voice rising in pitch. "What does that dead green tea bitch mean by posting such a misleading photo? You two were standing so close, and the way she looked at you was anything but innocent. And you even took her to the banquet yesterday, then didn't come home all night. Don't you have anything to explain to me?" My expression darkened, and I said unhappily, "We're all just friends, just like you and Ethan. Why are you so sensitive and suspicious of me? Ethan also posted photos of you two on social media, including cheek-to-cheek ones, and I didn't ask a single question, I trusted you completely. But you, could it be that there's something unclear between you and Ethan, so when you see Serena, you immediately project it onto yourself and get so worked up?" Victoria was left speechless by my words, her face turning ashen. She took a deep breath, her expression shifting repeatedly. Finally, she softened her tone, "Honey, don't be angry. I only got upset because I love you. But after all, you're a married man, and you should still keep your distance from other women." She's really good at playing double standards. She let Ethan move into our marital home, held a wedding ceremony, and even openly brought him to various banquets, yet she expects me to stay chaste for her. Does she even deserve it? I took a step back, putting distance between us. "Victoria, don't take yourself too seriously. We're already divorced, you have no right to make demands of me. I thought you were smart enough not to come and disgust me after the divorce. I didn't expect you to be both arrogant and foolish. Now that we're divorced, I can do whatever I want." After saying that, I stepped through the villa's main gate, turning around to flash her a malicious smile. Victoria, goodbye forever. Pretending with her was exhausting, so I decided to lay my cards on the table. Victoria didn't expect me to change my attitude so quickly and was completely stunned. After snapping back to reality, her beautiful face was filled with rage as she pointed at me and shouted, "Julian, what do you mean by this? What do you mean?" It seems she still hasn't come to terms with reality. I spread my hands and smiled brightly. "Victoria, divorcing a scumbag like you have no idea how happy I am." Victoria's face instantly turned pale, her voice trembling. "So, everything you said before was a lie?" I answered honestly, "Yes." Victoria instinctively took 2 steps back, her eyes reddening in an instant. "Was the divorce something you've been thinking about for a long time?" "Of course." She looked stunned, staring at me for a long moment as if she suddenly didn't recognize me. After confirming I wasn't lying, she became furious, and tears streamed down her face. She gritted her teeth and said, "Julian, it was you who said we'd have a fake divorce, and I could remarry you any time I wanted. It was also you who said we should just do a good deed and help Ethan out. How could you go back on your word and trick me into signing the divorce papers?" I sneered. "You actually believe that? You're so naive, really. When you're old, I'll sell you health supplements." Victoria was mocked by me, her face turning red and pale. But she still seemed to think she wasn't in the wrong and began to condemn me. "Julian, how have you become so petty? If you really didn't want to, you could have just refused from the start. Why did you have to coax and deceive me into divorcing you? I was just helping a friend, getting him through a tough time. What exactly did I do wrong? Was it really necessary for you to go to such lengths to trick and scheme against me? Were our 6 years of feelings together really worth so little in your heart?" She's really good at turning the tables. I couldn't take it anymore and slapped her directly. "Victoria, don't think I won't hit you just because you're shameless. Put yourself in my shoes. If I brought a woman home and did the same things you did, could you calmly accept it? If we were alone together, wouldn't you suspect I was doing something else with her? If I went around proclaiming she was my true love, would you believe I was just helping her without any ulterior motives?" Faced with my series of questions, Victoria opened her mouth but couldn't answer for a moment. Because she and Ethan weren't as innocent as she claimed, even if they hadn't physically cheated, they had already emotionally betrayed me long ago. I scoffed lightly and mocked, "Now you know why I insisted on divorcing you, because you're tainted." I couldn't be bothered to spare her another glance, turning around to head home and catch up on sleep. Unexpectedly, Victoria suddenly rushed over, urgently grabbing my hand. "Honey, please don't be like this. I know I was wrong. I promise that as long as Raven stops paying attention to Ethan, I'll send him abroad, and I'll never have any contact with him again." She looked at me expectantly, choking back sobs as she said, "Can you trust me just this once?" I pried her fingers off one by one, expressionless as I replied, "It's too late. I've got plenty of beautiful women waiting to go out with me." I walked away without looking back, leaving Victoria behind, completely broken and sobbing. For a while, Victoria didn't come looking for me again. I heard she was being targeted by Raven everywhere and had suffered quite a bit. Several of her company's major clients were poached, which made her father extremely dissatisfied with her. Moreover, the fact that she divorced me for Ethan spread like wildfire in our social circle. We were once seen as the model couple, but now everyone calls her a scumbag, and the label of cheating is firmly stuck to her. Public opinion is anything but friendly toward her. On the contrary, everyone sympathizes with me. Seeing me hanging out with Serena, they even say I've finally opened my eyes and wish me to find a good person again. Actually, Victoria ending up in this situation is entirely her own doing. All she could think about was finally being able to be with her white moonlight openly, and she thought I would always tolerate her unconditionally. That's why she acted so recklessly. This is karma. Knowing she's not doing well, I feel incredibly pleased. But I never expected she would have the nerve to bring Ethan to my door again. Ethan had bruises on his face and a bandage wrapped around his arm. I heard he was dragged to a place without surveillance by a few people and beaten up. Even after reporting it to the police, no one was found. Although everyone knew who was most likely behind it, there was just no evidence. As soon as Victoria saw me, she started scolding me without hesitation. "Julian, look at the terrible idea you came up with. You said that as long as I married Ethan, Raven wouldn't target him anymore. Look at how badly he's been beaten." Ethan's face was tense, his eyes filled with anger toward me, as if I were the one who broke his arm. He even questioned me outright. "Julian, I don't think Raven would attack me. Was it you?" Hearing this, I narrowed my eyes and immediately punched him in the face. Caught completely off guard, his head jerked to the side, and he nearly stumbled to the ground. In the next moment, my bodyguard rushed over and roughly pinned him to the floor. I looked down at him with contempt, pressing my foot against his head. Take a good look at yourself. Who do you think you are, daring to act so arrogantly toward me? Since you doubt me, I won't let myself be wronged for no reason. Ethan's face flushed red with anger as he shouted, "Let me go. I'm calling the police." I pressed down harder with my foot, distorting his face. Go ahead and call them. Then you'll find out that if I decide to act, I won't just settle for breaking one of your arms. This bastard caused the original owner a lot of trouble in the original plot, and I won't go easy on him. Seeing this scene, Victoria's face instantly turned deathly pale. She rushed over to pull me away, but I slapped her aside. You hit me?" Victoria covered her slapped cheek, her eyes brimming with tears. I shook my hand and said lightly, "It's not like I haven't hit you before. You'd better get used to it." Victoria glared at me with a mix of shock and anger, saying in a fluster, "Julian, aren't you afraid I'll never speak to you again?" I was torn between laughter and tears. What kind of threat was that? I even wondered if there was something wrong with her mind. Her ignoring me would be a huge relief for me. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I hope you keep your word and never show up in front of me again. Tears finally rolled down from the corners of Victoria's eyes. She opened her mouth, about to say something more. Just then, my assistant walked in. "Boss, Miss Serena's car is already waiting for you outside." I nodded and was about to leave when Victoria suddenly blocked my path. "Where is she taking you? It's so late, and the two of you being alone together, isn't that inappropriate? She sure has a lot of nerve. I'm single and wealthy now, isn't it perfectly normal for me to have a close female friend?" I crossed my arms and spoke coldly, "Victoria, what gives you the right to question me? Don't forget, your husband is right over there." I tilted my chin toward Ethan's direction, and Victoria's face instantly turned pale with rage, her fists clenched tightly. "We're only separated on paper, Julian. You dating other women is still cheating," Victoria said angrily. I smiled faintly. "You said it yourself, the law doesn't recognize a separation on paper, and besides." I paused deliberately, then added meaningfully, "She and I are just friends, nothing more. You should understand." I threw her own words back at her, and her expression instantly turned sour. She glared at me furiously for a few seconds, then actually threatened me, "I'll expose our fake separation. Once the public finds out they've been deceived and learns you're two-timing, they won't let you off the hook." She really is foolish to the core. She thinks she's got leverage over me but forgets it's her own weakness too. If she goes public, does she really think she'll walk away unscathed? I smiled nonchalantly, "Suit yourself. If Raven finds out that your marriage to Ethan was a lie to deceive her, given her ruthless nature, who knows what even crazier things she might do to get back at both of you. So, it's hard to say who'll end up worse off if you spill the beans." Victoria stood rooted to the spot, her face contorted, chest heaving violently. I couldn't be bothered to spare her another glance. Turning around, I picked up the gifts prepared by the secretary, a set of jewelry, a luxury handbag, and a bouquet of flowers. As I walked out, I instructed the bodyguard, "Throw that eyesore out." The bodyguard grabbed Ethan and dragged him out like a dead dog. Ethan grunted in pain, and as soon as he started cursing, the bodyguard punched him, knocking out a tooth. Only then did he shut up obediently. Victoria, for her part, seemed to ignore Ethan entirely, her eyes fixed intently on me. Just as I was about to get into the car, she rushed over like a madwoman, reaching out to grab me. I quickly closed the car door, nearly catching her hand. Victoria's face turned pale, then flushed with anger. My assistant added from the side, "It's been a while since I've seen the boss this happy." As soon as these words were spoken, Victoria's face instantly darkened. Unwilling to let me see another woman, she had no choice but to compromise. "Julian, I won't hold your recent absurdities against you. Let's remarry." Ha, she really is delusional. Remarry you? I sounded as though I had just heard the most ridiculous joke in the world, looking her up and down disdainfully. "Are you even worthy?" Under her gaze of shock, disbelief, and anger, I hummed a little tune and had the driver drive away. "I'll come find you again tomorrow." After the car started, I heard Victoria shouting from behind. "Humph, if she can find me, I'll consider it a loss. I've been really busy lately, no time to deal with her." However, what happened a few days later still caught me off guard. Victoria actually barged into Gemma's house. Gemma is her best friend, and I happened to have gotten drunk and stayed here last night. When Victoria saw me sitting on the sofa in casual clothes, she was first stunned, then her eyes immediately turned bloodshot. She then looked at Gemma sitting opposite me, and the anger on her face intensified. "Gemma, what's going on between you two?" Gemma calmly said, "Just as you see, he stayed at my place last night." Victoria was instantly enraged, pointing at Gemma's nose and shouting, "You shameless homewrecker. Julian is my husband, and you're supposed to be my best friend. How dare you be with him?" Gemma remained composed, speaking calmly, "He's not married, and I'm not either. Why can't we be together?" Victoria widened her eyes, rushed over, and raised her hand to strike Gemma. "You're just shameless. Julian is mine, and you're nothing but a homewrecker." I stood up, grabbed Victoria's hand, flung her aside forcefully, and then shielded Gemma behind me. "Victoria, watch your words. We've been divorced for a long time." Victoria's eyes instantly reddened as she pointed at me and said, "It was you who schemed against me, tricked me into getting a divorce. You had already changed your heart, hadn't you?" I couldn't help but feel exasperated. "You were the one who changed first, okay? When we were together, you said you'd only love me forever. Yet, just a few years later, you brought Ethan home, claiming you were helping him avoid romantic entanglements. Do you really think I couldn't see through your intentions? You want to act like a saint while behaving like a hypocrite. It's truly despicable. Yes, I have a few close female friends now, but I'm open and honest about it." Victoria began to cry, her voice trembling as she said, "Julian, I was wrong. I can't live without you. I shouldn't have brought Ethan home in the first place, nor should I have held a wedding with him, let alone publicly declared him as my true love. But Julian, Ethan and I never registered our marriage, and we never crossed any boundaries. I'll send him abroad, and we can remarry, okay?" I sneered coldly. "If you truly realized your mistake, you would have sent Ethan away long ago and come begging for my forgiveness. What you just said makes it clear that you still want to keep Ethan around while having me back by your side. You want everything, but in the end, you'll end up with nothing. I genuinely feel sorry for the original host. He died tragically because of this woman, and I won't forgive her on his behalf." Victoria's face turned pale as she anxiously defended herself. "I'm not. I didn't." Her voice carried a hint of pleading. "Can't you really accept Ethan?" I was stunned by her shamelessness and asked with a laugh, "Then can you accept me having other women?" "No." Victoria roared in anger. I shrugged and said mockingly, "You can set fire while forbidding others to light a lamp. Talk about double standards. You take the cake. Get lost, and don't show your face around me again." I waved my hand, and the bodyguards immediately stepped forward to drive her away. Victoria waved her hands angrily, refusing to let the bodyguards touch her. "I'm his wife, and I'm not leaving." Gemma stepped forward and said coldly, "This is my home, Victoria. You're trespassing, and I can call the police. Making a scene won't do anyone any good." Victoria cursed loudly, "Gemma, you bitch. How dare you steal from me? I won't let you get away with this." Gemma deliberately snuggled into my arms in a coquettish manner, wrapping her arms around my waist and saying, "She's so fierce, I'm really scared. Don't be afraid." I held her to comfort her, then turned and glared angrily at Victoria. "You scared her, apologize." Victoria trembled with rage all over, and suddenly her eyes rolled back as she fainted. "What a nuisance, I hope she doesn't die here." I immediately had the bodyguards carry her away and called an ambulance while I was at it. I'm really too kind. But she really brought it on herself. Relying on the original host's affection for her, she trampled all over his feelings, thinking he would always tolerate and forgive her. I won't indulge her, she's just reaping what she sowed. A week later, Ethan actually showed up at my door. He looked utterly disheveled, with fresh injuries on his face and a noticeable limp as he walked. Seeing him in such a miserable state, I smiled with satisfaction. Eyes filled with hatred, Ethan gritted his teeth and said, "You win." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Truth be told, I never really saw him as a threat. He was just a spineless man who relied on women, and all his tactics were carried out through them. After I stopped playing along with them, the two of them had been constantly at odds. He and Victoria had been having a rough time lately, and with Raven's retaliation on top of it, the conflict between them had long since reached an irreconcilable point. Ethan saw that I wasn't speaking, the muscles on his cheeks twitched a few times, and finally, with a grim expression, he said, "Victoria sent me to apologize to you. She said that as long as you forgive her and remarry her, she will be as devoted to you as before." I laughed. "What makes you think that just because you apologize, I have to forgive you?" "Victoria is an extremely obsessive person, the more she can't have something, the more she wants it. It was Ethan before, and now it's me. Unfortunately, I'm not the original owner, and I have no interest in her whatsoever." A flash of embarrassment crossed Ethan's face, and he gritted his teeth and said, "If you don't forgive me, Victoria said she won't let me off." The last few words he said were through gritted teeth, filled with intense hatred. It seems the two of them have completely fallen out. I smiled happily and said, "No forgiveness, you deserve it, just suffer on your own." Ethan seemed to think of something, a look of terror flashing across his face as he fell to his knees with a thud. "Julian, I was wrong before, please forgive me. Victoria has gone crazy now, she'll torture me and then hand me over to Raven. Raven is tall and strong, and I've heard he has a heavy taste that many can't handle. No wonder Ethan is so scared. I don't feel the slightest bit of sympathy for him, I just find it deeply satisfying. If he hadn't been so shameless back then, insisting on inserting himself between the original host and Victoria, he wouldn't have ended up in this situation today. The original host is already dead, and I can't forgive anyone on behalf of the deceased. Send him back and tell Victoria that I will never forgive them in this lifetime," I said. Ethan's eyes widened, filled with terror, as he frantically kowtowed to me, "Julian, I was wrong, I truly know I was wrong." I waved my hand, signaling the bodyguards to take him away. I know Victoria all too well, she's an extreme person, and Ethan won't have an easy time once he's sent back. Just like in the original story, when she finally learned the truth, she tortured Ethan to the brink of death for the male lead. At the same time, I leaked the news that Victoria and Ethan never registered their marriage to Raven. As for what she'll do next, I'll just sit back and enjoy the show. Sure enough, Victoria never contacted me again for quite some time. One day, I saw news about Victoria, saying she was suspected of human trafficking and had been wanted by the police. It turned out that, to get revenge on Ethan, she had injured him and sold him abroad, where he died. Raven had been keeping an eye on her and, of course, wouldn't let this opportunity slip. He immediately reported her to the police. Victoria caught wind of it and fled. I knew she would come looking for me, so I had long been prepared. Late one night, Victoria barged into my villa, stumbling and throwing herself in front of me. She gripped my wrist tightly, her voice trembling yet filled with a maddened delight, "Husband, I've taken care of Ethan. He'll never appear again." She raised her face, her eyes filled with hope. "From now on, no one can separate us. We can be together forever." I looked down at her, a slow smile curling at the corners of my mouth. Suddenly, several tall, burly men rushed out of the shadows, swarming Victoria and pinning her to the ground. At the same time, a dagger slipped from her sleeve and clattered onto the floor. Victoria stared in disbelief, struggling and screaming frantically. "Julian, what are you doing? Tell them to let me go. You can't do this to me, I'm your lover. You promised me we'd be together forever. You can't go back on your word." "Hand her over to the police," I said expressionlessly, without a trace of pity. Amid Victoria's desperate cries, the bodyguards dragged her away. I bent down to pick up the dagger from the ground. I guessed that if I didn't agree to be with her tonight, she would use this knife to kill me. But how could I give her that chance? Whoever wants to die can go ahead, but I certainly can't die. Victoria killed Ethan, and she'll probably spend the rest of her life in prison. On the day Victoria was taken away, I stood on the balcony of the villa, watching the lights of the police car fade into the distance, lit a cigarette and took a deep drag. The original owner died so tragically, and all it earned in the end was her kneeling in the rain at his grave, offering a confession before taking her own life. I didn't abuse her, nor did I kill her with my own hands. I simply followed her own choices, step by step, pushing her into the abyss she had dug for herself long ago. Everything was of her own making, from her insistence on bringing Ethan home, to her signing the divorce papers without hesitation, and to her repeated double standards and trampling on the original host's feelings. She thought she could have it both ways in love, believing I would always love and tolerate her as humbly as the original host did. Unfortunately, I am not the original host. I only love myself. 6 months later, I held a grand singles party on my private island in the Maldives. To celebrate my rebirth. News occasionally still features old photos of Victoria, always captioned with, former wealthy socialite turned fugitive, ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment for alleged intentional homicide. I look at those reports and just give a faint smile, casually tossing my phone aside. The sea breeze blows, rustling through the coconut grove. I finally understand that the greatest fortune of transmigrating into this book isn't successfully getting revenge, but completely escaping that disgusting, hypocritical, double-standard woman. From now on, there's only one thing left in my life, to live freely, recklessly, and as I please. As for Victoria, she will spend her days in a cold prison cell, repeatedly reflecting on the fact that she not only destroyed the original owner's life but also her own pitiful and laughable existence. As for me, I raised my glass and gently clinked it against the night sky. Original owner, my friend, rest in peace. I'll live the rest of this life to the fullest on your behalf. The night was gentle, and the waves lapped softly against the shore. I smiled freely and boldly. This was the ending I truly wanted.